How we doing, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome to the Ramblings. This is, of course, your Christmas special because it is less than 1 week till Christmas. Ding doo dee doo, ding 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 ding. Ring those holiday bells because we're going to discuss one of the icons of Christmas. Yes, folks, we are discussing the Grinch and his stealing of Christmas, and the many ways you can hear about this story. Before that, though, we're going to give a real quick breakdown of the Grinch himself. Just a couple minutes, little warm up to the story. Now, the Grinch was a character created by children's author and cartoonist Dr. Seuss. One of my personal favorites, and for what my opinion is worth, folks, an author whose books should constantly stay in circulation, written just as he did, because Dr. Seuss is awesome. We will, no doubt, one day do a full-on gushing of all things Seuss. And of course, Dr. Seuss is a pseudonym. The man's birth name was Ted Geisel. So, you know, all notes and respect to his family. The Grinch first showed up in the 1957 children's book How the Grinch Stole Christmas, and has been portrayed and voiced by many actors in various media. We are not going to break down every single last one of them, because it does cover, 50 odd years. Maybe even a little more. At least 50 years of media. The main thing you got to understand is basically if people do anything involving Dr. Seuss outside of adapting one of his books, any kind of ongoing series, the Grinch is going to show up. Still, it should be noted some of the big names that have had a bit of fun bringing the Grinch to life include Boris Karloff, Bob Hope, Walter Matthau, Jim Carrey, Benedict Cumberbatch, along with many others. Now, the Grinch is a green, furry, pot-bellied, pear-shaped, snub-nosed humanoid creature with a cat-like face and a generally cynical personality. And at the beginning of his original story, How the Grinch Stole Christmas, he had been living on a cliff overlooking the town of Whoville for 53 years. The Grinch is not young by human standards. Not going to say he's old, though, either, because I'm not that far away from 53 years. I'm a lot closer than I was when I first saw him. Now, the Grinch, as we said, first showed up in the Grinch Stole Christmas story. However, within the next 20 years, there was so much fan request for it that Dr. Seuss created a sequel story, Halloween is Grinch Night, which was an animated television special and is considered a prequel to How the Grinch Stole Christmas, as the Grinch is still very much at his nastiest. This is, in my humble opinion, an excellent special and should be hunted down wherever you can find it. It has been released on home video release, usually in like compilations, because I said it is a television special, so it is on the short side, like the original Grinch Stole Christmas adaptation, which we'll get to in a second. However, 5 years later, Marvel Productions, now known as New World Animation Limited, greenlit The Grinch, Grinch is the Cat in the Hat, a TV film co-starring Dr. Seuss's other iconic character, the Cat in the Hat. Woo! Shared universe crossover! Oh, they did it in 82. It's such a concept that apparently predated the last 10, 20 years. It's almost like it's not that original a concept. Sorry, folks, I do got to pick because, unfortunately, Hollywood does love to find a fad and beat it like a dead horse these days. Still, the point is that the Grinch dominates. Decade after decade. And even though this is the main story we're going to focus on today, the Grinch's Christmas fun and games could not contain his Grinchiness. He is a Grinch of many days and many adventures. With that said, let's break down to it. How the Grinch Stole Christmas was originally a book published by Random House, as we said before, in 1957. And much like the Peanuts Charlie Brown Christmas Special and many others that are aimed at children, it is designed to criticize the commercialization of Christmas. Yes, let's remember that at its core it is a story about not thinking Christmas is all about things. We all know the plot. As I said, 1957 was the original book release. Not going to go into super details except to say, as we said before, the Grinch lives in a cliff above the town of Whoville. Has been living there for 53 years. And for 53 years, he gets more Grinchy and more annoyed and more aggravated than any other day of the year when Christmas rolls around because of the loud noise and partying that accompanies the Who's giving each other all the things. All the things. Pew. Noisy things. Colorful things. Ugly things. Pretty things. All the things. Just give. Take. Grinch can't take it. Grinch teams up with his dog, his only companion, and the implication that even with his heart being 2 sizes too small, the only creature on Earth that he actually cares about. And they take all the things from all the Who's, get ready to dump them off the side of a mountain, only to find that the Who's are still singing their Christmas carols the next morning, prompting the Grinch to realize that perhaps Christmas does not come from a store at all. Perhaps Christmas means something a little bit more. And with this realization that Christmas is about togetherness, that Christmas is about celebrating the joy of being around each other, not the joy of giving each other things, the Grinch's heart grows 3 sizes that day, and he returns all the things to the Who's down in Whoville and joins them for the Christmas feast dinner. The Grinch himself carves the roast Who beast. The only other major character to understand about, in fact the only other named character in the book, is Cindy Lou Who, in the original book, no more than 2, a wee little lass, who wakes up while Santa Grinch is taking all the things and has a brief encounter with him. Now, in the original book, it basically exists only to show that, while the Grinch was an excellent thief, he was not perfect, especially since in the original book, Cindy Lou Who was the first house he stopped on. It was kind of his practice run house. Gotta do what you gotta do. And that he was, at this point, so insistent on being an absolute Grinch about things. Wow, it's almost like since 57 that his name has become a slang term for certain things. that he would even lie to a 2-year-old child about who he is and what he is doing, convincing the child he was simply taking the tree away to repair one of the lights, and that Santa, of course, would return it. Now, that's important to remember for later, folks. I will bring it up again, but keep that in the back of your mind. All Cindy Lou did was ask the Grinch what he was doing and get lied to. Of course, things get adapted. In 1966, we had the animated TV film narrated by Boris Karloff. This was a short, as it is in and of itself only officially 25 minutes long, and is a almost word for word perfect adaptation. Let's take a deep breath, folks. Let's breathe in it. Television networks in Hollywood took a super successful book, and with the exception of adding some music, especially the super iconic, mostly thanks to Boris Karloff and his incredibly unique voice, "You're a mean one, Mr. Grinch" song, it was a almost perfect adaptation from one medium to another. Maybe that's why they only made it 25 minutes, folks. They realized they wanted to do it right. They didn't want to make it more than it needed to be. I know. We got a long way to go, and we're trying to be positive here, folks, but it is what it is. Which, frankly, in the spirit of the Grinch and his hatred of commercialization, is why I say, while you should watch this movie when it shows up on streaming, or even classic television airwaves, it is a 25-minute film, and all the documentaries and behind-the-scenes stuff in the world do not justify paying like $20, $30 for a physical copy. Like, I'm sorry, no. Again, you find like a collection of all things Seuss animated, and it's in there, and that whole collection's gonna run you $20 to $30. Great, get that. You know, I mean, a Grinch trilogy of all three of those films we mentioned, yeah, that might be worth that money. But when you're buying a disc and it's like, hey, there's 30 minutes of TV special, as iconic and beautiful and perfect as it is, versus, oh, we put about 3 hours of people talking about a 30-minute film. I don't know. It's just weird to my head. Still, as we said, it was produced, it was created, done through a division of MGM Studios by Chuck Jones, a legend in his field of animation. And, as we've said before, has been a perennial on television and now streaming services ever since. So where did we go from there? Well, as we said, this was in 66. So that would have made it 9 years after the original book came out. Not bad time to figure things out. And it took 34 years before somebody thought they could do it. Better. icon IP. One of the most famous Christmas stories in American culture. Obviously, it couldn't just stand where it is. Somebody had to do something else with the property at some point. I'm not against remakes in and of themselves. And I do have a lot of respect for Ron Howard as director. I do have a lot of respect for Jim Carrey as an actor. There are multiple Jim Carrey movies that I am extremely fond of. A lot of stuff by Ron Howard I'm extremely fond of. It was produced by Imagine Entertainment, who's done a lot of great stuff. Distributed by Universal Pictures, one of the all-time great studios. But they made it 105 minutes long. They made it 80 minutes longer than the original special. 105 minutes versus 25 minutes. They made it 4 times as long, plus 5 minutes. Now, the original 25-minute special covered the book almost perfectly. Did not leave out large chunks of material. This is not a Lord of the Rings style book. This is a little children's book. Where are you going to get an extra 80 minutes of content from? Also, we should note, instead of animating it so that the visuals can look very similar to the Dr. Seuss drawn images in the book, they decided to make it live action. Jim Carrey in a big furry suit, the Who's being actors with a lot of prosthetics and the infamous little, pig nose looking things. Where did they get 80 minutes more of content from? Okay, well, you can let Jim Carrey be Jim Carrey. As I said, I'm not opposed to that in and of itself when you're dealing with a character created by Jim Carrey for Jim Carrey. Fire Marshal Bill from In Living Color, Ace Ventura. His version of Stanley Ipkiss and his alter ego, The Mask. There was some changes from it was a comic book adaptation. They did some changes, but it was an extremely underground comic. That was a thing. Jim Carrey is very energetic, bombastic, in-your-face, over-the-top person. The Grinch is not. The Grinch is a quiet, sneaky. He's a snake in the grass. He goes at his own pace. You don't see him coming. But still, I get it. Hollywood wanted a full-length theatrical movie. You gotta appease the people fronting the budget. Still, you can't just have 80 minutes of Jim Carrey being Ace Ventura in a green furry suit. So, look, I get a lot of people like this movie. And if Jim Carrey had done any other movie about somebody discovering the spirit of Christmas, if he had just crafted his own character, even if it was an obvious homage to the Grinch, kind of like, there's been 1,000 variants of the basic story of It's a Wonderful Life, another classic, iconic Christmas movie. Great, go for it. Do your thing. build something that's your own that still has a hint of, oh, we get it. It's something we're familiar with. We see what you're trying to pay respect for. But he put on the green suit with the pear-shaped head and the cat face. And he called himself the Grinch. And they kept the line in the start of the movie that nobody in Whoville knows quite the reason that the Grinch is how he is. Because that was the key part of the story. That's what makes the story have a Christmas miracle at the end. The Grinch, for all anything anybody could tell, was simply born in a perpetual bad mood. It just gets worse during the holidays. And so, the idea that the Christmas spirit in its purest, most spiritually uplifting form could rehabilitate a being just born frustrated and annoyed is a miracle. Instead, we get a story about little elementary school age Grinch having a crush on the prettiest Who in school and getting rejected when he tries to give her a Christmas present and staying pissy about that for 53 years. And the fact that her and her classmates are all still alive in Whoville are the adults over-commercializing Christmas. I mean, the animated special had a whole sequence, but this movie, it flat out goes, just like Jim Carrey as a performer, so over the top with this Who's love material goods and buying them and giving them thing, that it's... Between the whole getting bullied over his appearance and trying to give a special Christmas gift to the pretty girl thing, and the way they act about shopping, and everybody trying to out-Christmas each other, not only did they literally contradict what they said at the start of the film, that the Grinch is just the Grinch and nobody knows why, because they had to take a line from the original book, because it's an adaptation of a book. Not only do all the adults in town know why, but they basically turned it into a big conspiracy. All those adults in town, and not a single one ever, thought in 53 years to go to the Grinch's cave and go, okay, look, dude, I get 6 or 7 of us laughed at you and made fun of you and made you feel like you were, the size of a flea. But, look, we think they're jerks too. We told them off. That one guy, we beat him up and stole his lunch money. Dude, you're not the only one that doesn't like that. We don't approve of how they treated you. Or even... Look, man, I know we did that. It's been 10 years. We were kids. We were cruel. We didn't understand what we were doing. We did not have good empathy. We apologize. We sincerely, in our hearts, apologize for being horrible to you. You did not deserve it. The fact that not a single citizen in Whoville thought to do that for 53 years, the Who's are the villains of this movie. All the horrible things the Grinch does, the Who's have it coming. And then Cindy Lou Who, this footnote character in the book, this character that only exists to highlight how not a good person the Grinch is, who herself has nothing to do with the Grinch's rehabilitation, is now the second most important character in the movie, is now older than 2. She's like, I don't know, like 10, 12. She is old enough to wander around on her own and ask questions on her own. Definitely no younger than 8. Like, she's going around unsupervised. Even if her parents are scumbag bullies with no repentance 50-odd years later like the rest of adults in town, she's speaking coherently. She's climbing mountains. Even if there's a good path, I'm sorry, that's not something somebody who's no more than 2 is doing. So they up-aged Cindy. She's the one that exposes all this backstory origin for the Grinch, because she's apparently the only Whovian, or excuse me, that is different groups. I apologize to all those who watch Doctor Who. A Whoisk. A Who. I don't know, that's the Who's are just Who's. Sorry, Sue, she probably could have used some better naming convention there. She's the only Who that has any kind of concept of empathy for another living being at Christmas time, instead of just, oh, something that breathes. I can throw a gift at it to look like a cooler person than my neighbor who's throwing gifts at these people. Which I guess would make her, by some genres, conventions, like a mutant Who. Oh, she's a Who. She's a Who born with sympathy for her fellow living beings. She's a freak among Who's. So she spends the whole movie actively exposing this conspiracy and then shaming the adults over it and encouraging the Grinch to rehabilitate. So they've now made Cindy Lou Who the full-blown hero of the movie, because she's the one pushing the plot along. She's the one trying to resolve the conflicts. Now, I will give credit. Cindy Lou Who was played by Tyler Momsen, who has gone on to be a singer, songwriter, musician, and is actually very good at it. Good job. You know, you survived being a child actor in a major movie without going through like 15 years of just abusing your mind and body, because Hollywood does horrible things to children, especially as they age out of children roles. That's another conversation for another time. But yes, her band, The Pretty Reckless, check it out on YouTube. Been around since 2009. Very cool. All for you. But just... We try to be very constructive here. We try to look at the silver linings in a lot of things. You know, a couple episodes ago, I did what is extremely hard for people on the internet to do, and give a very honest and fair opinion of, you know, a movie that gets people very emotional, especially among their fan community. You know, now, I've covered some movies that disappointed me, and I will say that they disappointed me. I want to reiterate what I said here. All of the actors gave 100%. The director, Ron Howard, is a brilliant director who's done a lot of truly wonderful movies that have defined a generation of cinema. Jim Carrey is an incredible comedian. This movie more than disappointed me. This movie irritates me. This movie annoys me. This movie makes me feel like the Grinch of Act 1 and 2 in the story. I am frustrated when every year Christmas time rolls around and I see this movie pop up in stores, and I see people online talking about this movie, especially in positive terms, because it blows my mind how anybody can be exposed to the original story. Maybe they weren't, and that's the point. Or maybe they just didn't watch it every year on TV and they've forgotten how pure and awesome the original story is. I don't know. It's not a conversation I like to have with people. I don't like to talk about this movie most of the time because I can't talk about it without getting very frustrated and getting into basically a accusatory attitude with people who say they enjoy the movie. But it takes all of the Christmas spirit and Christmas miracle out of the movie, because the Grinch is not a villain in need of reform. The Grinch is a guy who honestly got a bad deal, and nobody ever admitted to him that it was a bad deal. Nobody ever apologized to him. Nobody ever tried to make amends. And in the process, an entire village, save for one girl, just lied to each other about how they treated the Grinch when they were all kids, and perpetuated this urban legend that the Grinch was some devil-made flesh that could not be reasoned with, could not be stopped, could not be saved from. The only good part about this entire idea of how the Who Village felt about the Grinch, as this slasher villain living in a cave above them, is the very start of the movie, where the teenage Who's, being all rebellious and trying to show their courage, especially those guy Who's to those girl Who's, males, you know what I'm talking about. And they do the whole, oh, I'm going to knock on the Grinch's door because I'm so brave and manly. And it goes bad for them. That's it. Like a 3-minute sequence in a 108-minute movie is the only thing that was worth filming. They should have just made a 5-minute short about that. Introduce the idea of the Grinch, show them knocking on the door, the Grinch busts them up and sends them scurrying. That should have been it. And I'd have been happy with it. And I'd have watched it every year. Because that is all this idea of a live action Grinch was good for. But again, I don't blame the actors. I don't blame the director. I blame the Hollywood system. And this idea that just started within the last 25 odd years. I can't even say started, but it became very endemic, very plague-like in the 21st century. Started at the end of the 20th, because, stuff has to get greenlit and scripts written. That takes time. That even though you have something that people watch every year and are perfectly happy with, we can do it bigger and better, and it's worth doing. No. 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 Stop it. So 18 years later, Universal Pictures decided to try again, but this time went to Illumination, those who are famous for the Despicable Me IP, among many others. But they love Despicable Me. It's in their opening credits. The Minions. I admit I do love a good Minion. And created another full-length theatrical. Now, here's where we bring things back to the positive again, folks. First, they had the good sense to only make this movie 85 minutes. That's right, they lost 23 minutes of fluff from the previous theatrical. They went back to animation. Yay! They got Benedict Cumberbatch, Rashida Jones, Kenan Thompson, Pharrell Williams, Angela Lansbury. Music by Danny Elfman. Oh my. Oh. I mean, Pharrell Williams, I'm 50-50 on, but, he's good at what he does. Just, I'm not a fanboy like I am Danny Elfman. And, of course, Angela Lansbury. Wonderful actress. Many years. Career spanned 80 years. May she rest in peace. She did pass in 2022, so, she was able to finish the film and see it be successful. Now, I still prefer the original 25-minute, almost word-for-word adaptation. This movie is the halfway mark. This is a movie I don't mind watching. I enjoy bits and pieces of it. But it still does too much. It still takes a little bit of magic and miracle away from the story by doing too much. Now, we're going to focus on the positives. Yes, Cindy Lou Who is still older than 2 in this movie. However, she has a group of friends with her, and she is not directly concerned with rehabilitating the Grinch and discovering the origins of his bad attitude. She simply bumps into him a couple times in the movie while pursuing her own Christmas is not about physical material goods goals, and her good attitude. Yes, it is still the crux of what rehabilitates the Grinch, but it comes off in a much more organic way. Because, again, she's not specifically trying to make the Grinch into a good person. She doesn't even fully comprehend how bad the Grinch is. She's just a good person who is not materialistic. And the Grinch encountering that and the purity of her Christmas wish, kind of thing that only a child in a less than ideal home setting could come up with, is what touches his heart. And that is beautiful, people. I have no problems with that. We have a Cindy Lou pursuing her own goals, but the way she goes about pursuing them with help from her friends is beautiful. And that's the Grinch realizes that. Even the Grinch has to go, wow, she's a really good person. And she has a support system of good people, too. Maybe the Who's aren't that horrible. And more importantly, we see other Who's in town who are doing their thing. And yes, they're a little over the top with the idea of Christmas celebrating. But they're still better people than we got in the Ron Howard film, because it's not about outdoing each other as individuals and the inherent arrogance and snobbery that has as its undercurrent motivations. But they just love Christmas and spending Christmas with each other so much, they just get a little manic about it. There's one Who in particular that, even if it's completely one-sided opinion, thinks the Grinch is his best friend. And when the Grinch comes to town to get food and supplies for his little hermit cave, is always happy to see him. And wants the Grinch to hang out with him. That's what you need. You need Who's that are genuinely good people. There is no background story of the Who's teasing and bullying the Grinch and never making amends for it when they get older. Because honestly, they didn't learn better. Which means they're not discussing that movie anymore. But these are good people. We do get a background of the Grinch, but it is a much more grounded, understandable story. Which is, and again, I'm not trying to give major plot spoilers. I do encourage you to see this. As I said, it is a good movie. It is very well done. But basically, the Grinch is an orphan and never got adopted. And every year at Christmas, that whole spirit of togetherness, nobody ever wanted to celebrate with him. He was the unwanted orphan in town. So it just, what was intended to be a pure-hearted thing, looked in through his lens of being unwanted, just took that bad feeling and amplified it 100-fold. So when he grew up and was able to take care of himself and be a hermit outside of town, every year at Christmas just reminded him of feeling like unwanted trash as a child. And I get that. And it makes it so much more believable when he encounters who's that are good people, that want to help each other, and that some of them accept him, that would make it better, that would make him become a better person. And it works. It is a wonderful movie. I did not see it for years because the trailer didn't touch on enough of that. It focused on the comedy. And I get it, it's a movie for kids, and there's a lot of comedy, and it's good comedy. It's comedy, it's very organic, and it works. It's not forced. It's wonderful writing in this movie. But I have seen it now, and I will say, yes, it is. This is the original movie. This is the original 25-minute special. Looks right up here, but this is the 25-minute special. I'd put the Illumination one right here. It is close enough, it is worth seeing. It is close enough, you can have a great time doing it. It appreciates the idea of the Christmas miracle that was in the first movie, or in the original book, even. It cuts into it slightly by giving a reason why, but it helps because the reason's very understandable to anybody that was not popular as a kid and had that feeling of being not wanted. And the fact that the other Who's, from everything we've seen, most of them never really talked to the Grinch, mostly because the Grinch didn't want to talk about it, enough to realize how they made him feel back in the day, so they didn't realize they needed to make amends. And as I said, there was a couple of them in town that actually tried to be friendly to the Grinch. It just didn't quite click in until the events of the movie tripled down on that, dude, we're willing to accept you if you're willing to want to be accepted. And that's what makes it work as a movie. That's what makes it a good Christmas movie. The Christmas spirit finally got through to the Grinch. It was going to happen one day, it just took a little too long. So there you go, folks. The books are still in print. Buy the original book. Read it with your kids. Watch the original 25-minute television special. Watch the 2018 Illumination version. Appreciate those versions because at the core they all tell the same story. The Illumination one just builds upon the story. You know? If you've seen the 2000 version and you like it, look, I'm not judging you as a person. I'm happy you have a movie that you enjoy watching. But I just can't. I just can't. Because every time I look at it, I think about that book that I read dozens of times as a kid. And I think about that television special that I have watched dozens of times throughout my lifetime. And I just can't do it. The Who's are not good people, except Cindy Lou. And even then, the fact that by being a good person in that Who society, by society standards, she's not a good person because her ethics are completely clashing with everybody else in town. So that's the thing, is to make her any kind of decent human being, they had to make her somebody that nobody in town could understand why she would even think that way, let alone act that way. Even her own parents. The Grinch just being way... It's just Jim Carrey's too much energy for the Grinch as a character. I mean, you went from a snake in the grass. Like, that is a visual image in the 66 animated version. You see him slithering along the floor of a house to this bombastic, just constantly making noise and moving in massive ways, like you gave your 5-year-old just the whole bag of sugar and washed it down with chocolate syrup and set him loose in the neighborhood. Grinch doesn't work for me. And if it works for you, that's fine. If it works for you, I'm happy that you have that. Something that brings you that happiness and joy in your life. But for my 2 cents, I cannot recommend that movie at all. So that being said, I hope everybody has a wonderful Christmas. Feel free to comment. Tell me I'm a horrible person for saying what I said today. You know what? You have that right. And you should exercise that right. But even if you do, I'm still going to wish you a happy holidays. Even if it's not Christmas you celebrate. Hanukkah, Winter Solstice, Kwanzaa, Winter Festival, Festivus, whatever your December holiday of choice is. Enjoy it. Enjoy time with your loved ones. And if you want to be a Grinch, you know what? That's fine. Be an Act 1 Grinch. Honestly, there's large chunks of the holiday where I feel like that. Just remember, Christmas is not something you buy from a store. Christmas means something a little bit more.